Good evening, Danvers. I am Mark Zubarek, and I'm here to present the topics of the town news. And today is August 12th, 2021. And I did have a special guest that was going to discuss the issues with me, Jane Dean, today. She is unfortunately unavailable due to being cautious. She was notified today by the fire chief in Linfield that someone in the senior center has been reported to have had COVID, and she was in her class. So for some reason, the trackers in Linfield are the police chief and fire chief, and that's how she got the call. Because of being more cautious than we want to be, I believe that she did the right thing, and I appreciate her time. We will have her on again. Today, we will focus entirely on the Beverly Airport proposed master plan and the developments that have happened over the last 6 to 8 months. The master plan itself is available on the Beverly Airport internet site, and you can access it very directly. The agenda and opinions are solely by the topics of the town news host and commentators. So what you need to do is you need to understand where we're coming from. Now, to introduce the first segment, I'd like to present this Mark Twain quote. And this is so appropriate in our times. And the thing is that we have to consider this. It's easier to fool people than to convince them that they have been fooled. This is a quote I've used many times, and I appreciate Mark Twain saying that many, many years ago. So we need to be careful and not accept everything that the establishment is trying to fool us of. So, beginning segment 1, I'd like to just present a brief discussion of the history of the airport. Beverly Regional Airport was built in 1928 through the efforts of the Beverly Aero Club and the Beverly Chamber of Commerce. The United States Navy operated the airport during World War II under the Joint Use Agreement as Naval Auxiliary Air Facility in Beverly. It was commissioned on 15th May 1943, and the airfield was upgraded with a new asphalt runway. The Navy built the control tower, the barracks, and other structures consisted of four housing of 4 officers and 60 enlisted men. It was decommissioned as a military facility on August 1, 1945. Ownership of the airport was transferred back to the city of Beverly in 1950. That's the year I was born. The current Beverly Regional Airport covers an area of 470 acres at an elevation of 107 feet above sea level. It has 2 runways with asphalt surfaces. 927 is 4,755 feet by 100 feet wide. And the other one is runway 1634, and it is 5,001 feet, remember that 1 foot, by 100 feet wide. The airport is currently embedded into our residential neighborhoods and is no longer surrounded by farmlands and open fields. Good neighbor policies have been demanded by the affected residents for the past 50 years, with no success. BVY, which is Beverly Airport, has totally ignored these requests. Several accidents and incidents have been reported and have affected the safety and quality of life in our neighborhoods. Beverly Regional Airport has been in existence for almost 100 years and will eventually continue to operate in the future. The residents of our communities, specifically Beverly, Danvers, and Wenham, have established their homesteads during the past 50 years, and their input must be considered in the master planning effort that has been going on for the last, probably 15, 16 months. The residents of the adjacent and affected neighborhoods have constantly been impacted by the noise, size, and now commercial jet traffic. Anticipated extension of the longer runway will only increase the proximity and the noise levels. Public safety and quality of life for the neighbors has totally been ignored. So now what we want to do is, item 2 on here is conduction and the development of the BVY Airport Commission Master Plan. Priority in the master plan, which has been disseminated to us residents, 386 pages of information that has been gathered and consolidated by the consultant that did the master plan. Good neighbor and noise abatement not considered in this development. Beverly Regional Airport Master Plan development and anticipated impact to the neighborhoods in Beverly, Danvers, and Wenham was initiated to ensure that the airport has a solid plan to grow to meet the vision and aeronautical needs of the airport operators and supposedly the entire region. There is no explanation what that vision and the aeronautical needs are. The primary objective of the master plan, as it has been presented, is to obtain the $20 million grant that has been promised by the FAA, currently in the application process. The FAA incentivizes the improvement and expansion of small local regional airports by investing our tax revenues. The master plan proposed is focused to increase the availability of the air facilities to increase of commercial use of airfields. The prime reason for this master plan is to increase the length of the runway to 5,601 feet to facilitate use of the larger and heavier jet planes for current and future commercial traffic. Over our neighborhoods, the neighborhoods extend all the way into Topsfield, Middleton, Linfield, Peabody, and into Danvers, Beverly, and Wenham. There is one entity that was not included in the planning effort because I have investigated this planning effort from the beginning. Our residents and the neighbors of the adjacent and affected neighborhoods in Danvers, Beverly, and Wenham were left out of the planning effort. Airport management and the consultant ignored the long-term noise and quality of life effects of our neighborhoods. By extending the runway 300 feet towards Danvers and 300 feet towards Beverly on the other end, will increase the length of the runway to accept larger and more noisy jet traffic, which they have already initiated. The reports of noise and touch-and-go overflights were of no interest until residents aired their complaints at a community presentation. These complaints have been reported and then ignored by the airport management and the FAA tower for over 30 years. Current levels of noise control is being investigated by an airport commissioner who has done very well in representing the residents. This is Scott Dulay, he's the chairman of the commission, and to select neighbors and concerned citizens. This committee was formed to voice the neighbor concerns, but appears to be formed to appease a few members of these communities without considering the effects of the proximity and expansion of the proposed runway expansion. This committee has had limited success. They have long discussions. I have read many of the reports of their communications, but they have limited success with identifying our concerns, but this committee has basically been hijacked to divert the attention of the master plan expansion. So the master plan was a long-term, 20-year vision of what the airport is, what it's going to be, and how it's going to be done to be presented to the public. So we have a master plan document here, and what I'll do is I'll just go with a few questions regarding this. There's the master plan schedule, basically, and it is pre-planning, investigation, and this is forecasts of planning and activity levels. Solutions, this is the one that really impacted us as residents. Alternative analysis, and we'll get into that. The implementation is the next step. And we don't really know yet what the implementation is going to be, because comments have been submitted to the consultant and to the airport management and the commission, but we don't know whether they're going to be incorporated, considered, or rejected. Final master plan documentation, it shows on here that's going to be step 4, and airport layout plan will be generated from that. So what was developed? And what I have gathered from the development of this master plan after it's been presented to the communities and to the interested members, if we can go to when and by whom was this plan developed? The plan was developed by a consultant with input from the airport management, possibly from the airport commissioners. I have not gathered that, but the airport commissioners are the ones that are responsible for conducting this master plan. There's on our previous slide, we had public engagement. It's a vicious circle all the way around, but the public engagement was only available when the master plan was drafted, and on January 26th it was presented, or January 21 it was presented to the commissioners, and on January 26th was the first community meeting for the Danvers residents, and during that same week the comments were coming in from Danvers, Beverly, and Wenham. Who participated in the preparation development? All I've been able to gather from the documentation that I have received is that the airport operators, the business community at the airport, were the primary generators of the requests and requirements of the airport. Now, every time you talk to the airport manager and to the consultant, all of this is driven by FAA requirements. That's a bunch of smoke. The airport management is responsible for making that airport comply with the FAA requirements. The current basis, and I'll go through them. One of the questions I had is, who selected the option recommended? And there is no answer except the consultant sticks his head out. What was the input requested from the communities? The communities raised hell, especially in regard to the noise. And the only item that the Airport Commission was willing to consider, and I'll give Scott Dulé very much credit because he initiated this committee, noise committee, who are looking at what the noise was in the past. But the commission has not considered what the noise is going to be in the future, because that noise is going to be generated by an extension of 300 feet into the Danvers airspace and into the close proximity to residents on Old Burleigh Street. So we need to consider some of these. They're not very concerned with that. The commission and the consultant are not concerned because they're using the FAA as a whipping stick on the airport. Let's just go through the alternatives that have been developed. So if we can show the alternative 1, which is runway 1634. The runway itself, what they wanted to do is maintains existing conditions. FAA agrees to support 100-foot wide to preserve for long-term potential. Now, recently, within the last year and a half, I believe, I think it was done in 2020, the airport manager had money available for paving 100 feet wide runways in both directions. And she rushed into completing that, but now what it looks like is that runway may have to be reduced to 75 feet. But they had the money, they spent it. The one thing that this alternative shows is that there's no extension on the runway itself. It's within the boundaries of the airport for the takeoffs and landings and what airspace they need at each end of the runway. Represents existing conditions. And this is appropriate for the size and category of planes that they have decided that will be applicable at this airport. And they claim it's B2 category. So now if we go to alternative 2, which is maintain existing runway. FAA supports paving RSAs to enhance aircraft departure length, not arrival. FAA supports a 100-foot width to preserve for long-term potential. Because the original plans were to cut back that runway down to 75 feet, which is the gospel that's being preached by the FAA, that that's how wide that runway should be. However, one of the things on here is that maintaining existing runway, but paves the 300 feet on each end of the runway. Those are the safety zones that they have excavated in the past or extruded from the forest in the back and while they were cutting all the trees. Existing future runway conditions based on RIDC or B12 width requirement for the existing size of planes and weight of planes. FAA supports this, but what this does is basically puts the beginning of the runway on the Danvers side 300 feet closer to our residential areas, very populated areas. Now, on the north side, you have vegetation and wetlands, but on the west side, you have Bradford Road, Old Burley Street, all of the streets that are down by the high school. And you also have the high school situated, which is in the path of some of the runways. Now, the third alternative was even more extreme, because what the FAA rules and regulations, can we throw alternative 3, please? There we go. This one is ASDA 5,685 feet, which right now is 5,001 feet. And they want all kinds of airspace that would have to be expanded on both ends. And if you look at this extension is 683 feet on that angle. Now, I don't know where they're going to get that space, but that also includes or is adjacent to the very vastly populated area by the west side of the airport. Extends existing runway, applies FAA declared distances, potentially significant additional construction requirements. FAA supports 100-foot width to preserve for long term. Now, the one thing that you have to consider is that in this case, alternative 3, the Beverly side, which is the east side of the runway, is not being extended because they cannot encroach into the existing wetlands if you look at the right of the diagram. But the Danvers side is almost 600 feet extra that is getting closer and closer and closer to the Wenham and Danvers populated areas. So that's the 3 alternatives that have been identified. And here's the FAA Preferred Alternative. And this one is runway 1634 maintains existing status as a B2 runway. Runway safety areas are paved 300 feet each end, enhancing operational safety margins, operational benefits only for departing aircraft. Maintain existing runway 1634 width to 100 feet because it's already paved, to preserve for long-term potential. And that's the key word, long-term potential. They will buy out properties and go into the wetlands in the future. Supported by FAA and MassDOT with accompanying grant offers. There you go. This is all about money and increase in the length of the runway without consideration of the general public that resides around the airport. So this is the 1634 runway condition. Now, let's look at 16, no, it's not 16, it's 927. Maintains existing status as a B2 runway, exactly the same runway conditions, and the B2 operations are being conducted on this runway as on the 5,600-foot runway that they're proposing. Runway maintains existing length of 4,755. Note that 80% of primary runway 1634 equals 4,000 feet. That's not true. The existing runway 1634 is 5,001 feet. Runway width is reduced to 75 feet in conformance with FAA minimum width requirements. Note that funding to maintain a 100-foot width would be the responsibility of the sponsor. So after they rushed to the pavement of runway 927 to 100 feet, now the recommendation by FAA is to reduce it down to 75 feet. What sense does that make? Runway length of 927 is 4,755 feet. There are no extensions. Next, I have just a brief show of runways and taxiways at the airfield as it stands right now. Existing airfield, runway and taxiways. You look at the arrangement, and if you look to the left, you see the Danvers High School. You see the neighborhood right around there, Bradford Road, Colgate Road. There's all congested residential area, and what we are impacted by the noise and the takeoff from this airport, the fumes are going right into our neighborhood. Both runways, basically, it doesn't matter which one it is, but the 1634 is not extended at this time, but these are the taxiways and runways at the airport as it exists. So remember the location of these taxiways, because that's going to become an important piece later on. So if we go to the future airfield runways and taxiways, look where it ends up. It ends up further and further into Danvers, and it is providing extra space that has been identified on this master plan, because the taxiways are further apart than what they have been designed for in the past. So take a look at the orange areas, and now we go into the future airfield development areas. So this master plan does not necessarily consider just the air. Well, that's a phone call already. This does not consider just the airways, but we need to consider what are they talking about when they talk about development areas, future airfield development areas. So David, if we can throw in the next slide, which shows all of the saved space by realigning the taxiways, which will be closer to the runways. And what we'll see is that there are large areas between the crossovers between the two runways in yellow. Those are the areas that the Airport Commission and the airport management are targeting as tie-down areas, hangar areas, repair areas. I don't know what else they can put in there, but they can put in a lot of planes sitting closer than ever to the residential area that is right behind them. The west side of the airport has already large hangars and a fuel facility that has jet fuel that is being used at this airport. So all I wanted to do, and they didn't spend a lot of time on this area, but this will bring the airplanes, whether they're prop or jet, closer and closer to the residential area. And that's where our noise levels come from. Basically, at the end of the runway, when the runway begins, that's where the planes increase the acceleration, and that's when the noise begins. So, airport improvements that have been, suggested in this master plan. David, we can throw the next slide on. Increased runway 1634 length for departures. They're claiming that this is such an important factor. It works both ways. They depart and take off. Enhances the aircraft operational safety factors, promotes effectiveness and benefits of new GA aircraft. Did you hear anything in there about how close it gets to the residential areas and the homes? I didn't. Taxiway realignment increases operational safety and efficiency for aircraft. Did you hear anything about taxiways that are removed away from the residential area now provide for development of tie-downs and storage of aircraft right next to your residential area? Imperious services, existing airfield pavement to be removed. They're removing 586,085 square feet of surface, but they're paving airfield pavements to be added 482,210 square feet. So there's a few slivers that they're going to remove. Landside development maximizes financial sustainability for Beverly and development potential for area businesses. Constructed only if, when, and demand occurs. That's not in the plan that when the demand occurs, they're providing the space to the development to occur. Vehicle service roads enhance operational safety and security as well as increased efficiency. Utilization of recycled mill material from runway project. Great. They'll save the runway milled material and put it onto a safety and vehicle service road that they're planning to install. And that service road is going to go right around the existing fence that they just installed and repaired. Environmental, there's environmental issues here. Wetlands, minimal impacts. Noise, no significant change anticipated, study underway. Study underway was conducted for the planes themselves on the runway. The study to measure the noise levels beyond the runway and beyond the takeoff runways has not been done. Lighting, there's another issue. Lighting, progressive upgrades to LED, which for the runways and taxiways, waste recycling reuse program. The lighting in this case is going to be much, much brighter and more directed into the extreme areas of the runways. So, these are the airport improvements that are being proposed for the airport at Beverly, Massachusetts. Now, this was a presentation that was made on January 26th, And we had some questions. We had some opportunity to demand answers to some of the questions that people have had. One of the things that has captured the attention of the Airport Commission is the noise. There was a meeting conducted with the Airport Commission and residents that was remote. This whole development of the master plan was developed in a room back at the Beverly Airport without any input from the residents that are surrounding the community. I have comments, and these have been submitted to the Airport Commission. Letter submitted to MassDOT Aeronautics with comments related to community meetings of January 26th. Focus Group 1 and 2 conducted by consultant and operator dated March 27th. And what I like to do is maybe take a look at some of those focus group comments that are being incorporated, and they are only coming from the business operators and airport management. Here's this was conducted on March 27th, 2020. And this was held in a session, I don't know, maybe it was on the telephone or whatever. But it was attended by Gloria Bouillon, Beverly Regional Airport. She's the manager. Chris Willenberg, Airport Solutions Group, consultant. Hillary Fletcher, Invitation, J'Aviation. James Miklas, who's the consultant again from J'Aviation. David Sprenger, Fisheries Global Express, business operator. John Messenger, President, North Atlantic Air, big developer at the airport. Brad Ross, pilot. Marty Olson, Fisheries and Global Express, again, business operator. Francesco Sabelli, pilot. Abigail, on behalf, this was an attendant on behalf of Daryl Crate, pilot. Dave Morrison, from Director Operations, Malibu Flight Department. Tom Barnes, Manager of Aviation, Chief Pilot, Challenger 300. And Scott Sweeney. I didn't see any residents included in this. This was supposed to be a pilot focus group, and it was a meeting. These are meeting notes. And let me just read you a couple of these comments. Users like BVY because it is small town feel with recent service upgrades at BVY. This has made using BVY very enjoyable. Great. The corporate pilots advised that if they could have one runway length to extend, it would be runway 34, if they had their way. Since BOS International has lost 50% of GA ramp, many corporate jet operators from the North Boston and BVY area have gone to Bedford. Why not stay at Bedford? BVY is, if the runway is too short for them, they shouldn't be using BVY. BVY's FBO advised they have made many investments lately, which is also including new infield apron. The big benefit of BVY over BOS is less taxi time than Boston Logan. Operators can land and be off the plane and driving home. When a BOS, you would still be taxiing for 10 minutes. Current state of general aviation parking at BOS is really bad right now, and will be the next 3 years. So, in this respect, the Danvers residents should pay for the noise level that these planes contribute to our environment. There has never been a analysis of the EPA impact, of the environmental impact to the residents from this airport over the last 100 years. They've divided that community, and people have been beat down to the level where they don't think anything will be considered. They typically take half fuel and are very limited, he echoed. Everything Neil said about challenging 300 limitations at BVI. Obstacle clearance improved drastically. They do, well, this is what the airport's supposed to do. Global Express operator, they cannot take off with higher fuel loads at BVI. So go to Bedford or Lawrence. Now, I'm not going to take any more time on this, but these are items of comments and input that have been provided to this master plan. Concern letter regarding neighborhood issues, April 9th. Beverly Airport comments dated April 9th. Master plan discussion points, neighborhood issues, April 9th. Presented to Sally Kearns and Senator Lovely. Excerpt from Lawrence Airport data, dated March 3rd, 2021. The reason I bring up the Lawrence Airport is that Lawrence Airport was in the same condition that Beverly is now 20 years ago. And this is the reason Jane Dean was going to be my guest today, because she was involved in that noise abatement and control policy that was developed at the time. Lawrence Airport still continues to implement and conduct that policy, where Beverly Airport and the new management that has been imposed at this airport have abandoned that policy altogether. There's supposed to be a good neighbor policy. They haven't continued that because it is distracting the pilots from their development of their flights. So there's a noise abatement program Beverly Municipal Airport instituted in 2006, but currently abandoned by the airport management at BVY. Town of Danvers Beverly Municipal Airport Master Plan and recommended actions dated March 17, 2021. So all this information has been submitted back to the Airport Commission, to the airport manager, the consultant, to our State Representative Sally Kearns, our State Senator Lovely, and also recently the letter was sent to Representative Federal Congressman Seth Moulton. Now, Seth Moulton has reviewed the data, and he was provided this information because the defense by the Beverly Airport Commission and the Beverly Airport manager is that the FAA is making us do this. Well, Seth Moulton and I'm going to mention another name, Norman Abbott, Regional Director for Seth Moulton, have accepted and are considering this information. Because if the FAA is a federal agency, they can do something about it, whether it's to identify that there are issues, because right now the current application for the grant money is already proceeding. I've seen some documentation that shows that they're ready to go. So David, if we can throw in the next steps here, I have this is a very, very nice, colorful picture of an airport with a toy jet versus a military prop plane, basically. So, now next one, David. There we go. Next steps is, are we going to grow up to be a military prop plane or a jet plane? Or are we going to stay as a small recreational regional airport instead of becoming a major nuisance to our neighbors? So, currently, the plan, the master plan is the next sketch. Your voice matters, it says. Well, we haven't heard a peep out of the master plan developers because the comments have been submitted on January 26th, February 26th, and April 26th, and no response in either direction. I have some documentation here, and I'll just show you this because this is a labor of love and the airport documents that have been submitted to Board of Selectmen, airport commissioners, and other agencies where people in the neighborhoods that are affected, and now it's becoming effective in all neighborhoods around town, but the thing is we don't even realize it. So the next step is going to be comments from Phase 4 we'll be taking at our next meeting. We haven't heard a comment back from our airport commission, so we're asking for some response. So, next steps, presentation and draft chapter 4 and 5 are available now online. Virtual community meetings have been held for Beverly, Danvers, and Wenham. And I have listened to all of those community meetings because they were on remote televised. And the thing is, the sentiment is all the same, except that Danvers is drastically affected by this noise. Development and implementation plan and airport layout plan is being prepared. Completion of noise contours. Noise contours have been developed many times before, and all it does, it shows you the boundary of the plane while it's on the runway. And the noise does not necessarily go out past the runway width. So the thing is that they don't consider is when that plane takes off and gets up into the air, that's when the noise continues. And it says on here, please submit comments by February 26th. They have all been submitted. Email address was given, Beverly Regional Airport Administration, Henderson Road, Beverly, Mass. Summary of preferred alternatives. Runway 1634 maintains existing status as a B2 runway. Runway safety areas are paved 300 feet in each direction. Enhancing operational safety margins, operational benefits only for departing aircraft. And that's a bunch of smoke. Maintain existing runway 1634 width of 100 feet to preserve the local term potential. Now, that is a loaded question because the long-term potential is the next master plan. They have achieved the extension of the runway to 5,001 feet as a result of the previous master plan, and now they're going for another 600 feet on that particular runway. Runway 927 maintains existing status as a B2 runway. Runway maintains existing length of 4,755 feet, and there's a very special note in here. 80% of primary runway 1634 equals 4,000 feet. That's a bunch of smoke. Runway width is reduced to 75 feet in conformance with FAA minimum width requirements. Note that funding to maintain a 100-foot width would be the responsibility of the sponsor. It's already paved to 100 feet. Leave it alone. So, what is the current status? The current status is unknown. The current status has not been communicated back to the residents because they have not been considered in this development. Master plan generated community reaction because of the past and current noise already being generated by BVY. BVY's Noise Committee established as a byproduct of Airport Commission. This has been a very good turnout or turnaround from the Airport Commissioner because Scott DeLay has made it a personal attempt to address the noise issues. However, it is too little too late because these noise issues are coming from the last 20 years. Residents on the committee are now focused on noise abatement, which is great. That should have been done 20 years ago. Residents, the committee is actively looking for someone that will listen to them. Why now? And not consistently engaged by BVY management. Good neighbor policy was promised in the past, but never was realized. Too little, too late. The current noise committee has been hijacked by the airport management as a diversion to the new noise levels anticipated. And they don't want to get into that level of detail because they know that the level of the noise will increase. Master plan, what steps taken to consider community reaction? Well, that's one way of looking at it. Has the airport manager, or is the airport manager being motivated by the commission challenge to her contract to expand the business at any cost? That is a question that we should ask. The airport commission has been very introverted because they really don't want to talk about the noise and the level of proximity of the extended runways into the Danvers neighborhood. Master plan, what steps taken to date regarding the BVY runway expansion? Now, this is noise abatement. Jet takes off and landings were minimized in the presentation. Now, how is that going to happen? I'd like to just, political actions required, matter represented and discussed in virtual meetings with the politicians without any results that I have known. There is no process to conduct environmental assessment. Maybe we need one. Why are we asking for an environmental assessment of a power plant that is on the river's edge and not asking for an environmental impact statement on residents in the Danvers area from the noise and the fumes coming from the airport? We have to ask that question. The following is an excerpt from a letter sent to Federal Representative Seth Moulton. Your intervention with the FAA may produce a response that we need. We have brought these issues to the state representation without success. We already have constant traffic by commercial air traffic from Beverly and from Logan Airport every day and every night. Our homes and education facilities are in danger. Expansion of the airport is only good for the expansion of the Beverly Airport business and does not consider the effects on the quality of life in the surrounding communities. Danvers residents need your help. I and the affected neighborhoods have been associated with the resident issues related to the Beverly Airport for over 25 years. The residents' efforts have been consistent with the pleas by petitions and letters over the past 25 years to the airport management without reliable results. Therefore, the abutters and concerned residents must move forward and petition relief and defeat the planned expansion of the runways included in the master plan being completed. So, the current status again continues is that Beverly has just announced master plan runway expansions are already inviting new and more intense jet traffic from our neighborhoods. The master plan has BVY is only interested in expanding air traffic with no consideration. They have initiated in August flights, commuter flights. These are the commuter flights that we've been complaining about to Nantucket, Martha's Vineyard, New York City, anywhere you want to go. But it's a jet flight from Beverly to whatever destination you need. Application for grant funding from FAA and MassDOT is already proceeding. Residents and abutters are left out again, being ignored from the process. Local opposition needs to be reported to the funding agencies. Now, I have a few selected options that the residents can take, and I will help. Danvers BVY commissioners are now not representing the community at large. Mayor Cahill must get involved to represent the public interests of all the communities at large, not just the business community that he's endorsing. Neighbors must continue the pressure, possibly by organizing, and have a logo of Save Our Quality of Life, Stop the BVY Runway Expansion. Organize demonstration at east and west side of the airport gates. No jet runway needed. Let us live in peace. No more noise, please. Contact your relevant politicians who will listen to you to step up and finally represent their constituents. Contact Danvers Select Board, contact Danvers BVY Commissioners, that's Aaron Henry and Matt Mazur. Contact State Rep Sally Kearns, she was interested. Contact State Senator Lovely at the State House. Contact Congressman Seth Moulton or Norman Abbott. And the regional director, his telephone number is 978-531-1669. I want to thank you, and I want to provide you with another cartoon or a saying. David, if we can throw in courage in grace under pressure, which was Ernest Hemingway saying that at the World War when he returned. So thank you very much for listening. And I hope this wasn't too long, but I am running out of comments. But I will be back. We'll be back in September on our first show. Thank you, Danvers. Good night. See you in September.